Stop, don't scroll past this. Because if you're watching this right now, there's a reason it feels heavier than normal. Right before things change, life doesn't get easier. It gets quiet. It gets confusing. And it starts to feel like nothing you're doing is working anymore. But listen carefully. That moment you feel like giving up. That might be the exact moment you're closer than you think. There are moments in life when you wake up and nothing looks different on the outside, but everything feels heavier on the inside. You open your eyes, you reach for your phone, you check the same messages, the same empty notifications, the same silence where something was supposed to happen. And even though the room is the same, the light coming through the window is the same. Something in you feels like it is slowly wearing down without anyone noticing. You still move, you still function, you still try to act normal, but deep inside there is this quiet question that keeps repeating itself again and again without permission. Why is this taking so long? Why is nothing changing? Why does it feel like I am doing everything I am supposed to do but still standing in the same place? And the strange part is, you don't even say it out loud anymore because saying it too many times starts to make it feel more real than you can handle. You start your day with effort, not excitement. There is a difference between the two that only becomes clear when you are living through it. Effort feels heavy, like pushing something that doesn't want to move. Excitement feels light, like something is pulling you forward without force. At first, you had excitement. You had energy that made you believe that if you just stayed consistent, things would naturally unfold. But over time, consistency starts to feel like repetition without reward. You still show up, but now it feels like you are showing up just to prove to yourself that you haven't given up yet, not because you actually believe something will change today. And that is where the silent struggle begins, not in failure, but in waiting, because waiting without visible progress slowly starts to distort your perception of yourself. You begin to question whether the problem is the dream or the person chasing it. You look at others who seem to be moving faster, and even though you tell yourself not to compare, your mind still does it automatically. It is almost like watching everyone else cross a finish line while you are still trying to figure out if you are even running in the right direction. And the worst part is, nobody around you fully understands it because from the outside, nothing looks wrong. You are still trying, you are still moving, you are still functioning, so people assume everything is fine. But they don't see the parts where you sit in silence and feel like something inside you is slowly dimming. There are nights when your thoughts get louder than your actions. You lie down and replay everything you did that day, searching for something that proves progress. A message, a result, a small sign, anything. But most nights there is nothing, just the same cycle repeating itself. And slowly your mind starts building a story that maybe effort doesn't matter as much as you thought. Maybe timing decides everything. Maybe some people are just lucky. Maybe you misunderstood how this whole thing works. And once those thoughts settle in, they don't just leave easily. They stay in the background of everything you do, quietly affecting how you move, how you think, how you respond to setbacks. Even simple tasks start feeling different. Things you used to do with confidence now come with hesitation. You second-guess small decisions. You delay actions you would have taken immediately before, not because you stopped caring, but because caring started to hurt more than it used to. And when caring starts to hurt, your mind naturally tries to protect you by reducing how much you invest emotionally. That's when the struggle becomes even more invisible. On the outside, you are still trying, but on the inside, something is slowly disconnecting from the version of you that once believed without hesitation. And still, you continue. Not because you feel strong, but because stopping feels incomplete. There is a strange tension between exhaustion and responsibility. You are tired, but you are not ready to fully let go. It is like standing in a place where both staying and leaving feel difficult for different reasons. Staying hurts because nothing is changing. Leaving hurts because you don't know what it means to abandon something you once believed in so deeply. So you stay in between, in that uncomfortable space where nothing fully ends and nothing fully begins either. And in that space, you start noticing something subtle. Even though nothing external is changing, something internal is shifting. The way you observe things becomes different. You begin to see patterns in your behavior, in your reactions, in your patience. You notice that you are not the same person who started this journey with pure excitement. That version of you was driven by outcome. But this version of you is being shaped by endurance. And endurance changes people in ways that are not immediately visible. You don't realize it at first, but something important is happening in the background. You are learning how to sit with uncertainty without immediately running away from it. You are learning how to continue without constant reassurance. You are learning how to exist in a space where results are not guaranteed on demand. And even though it feels uncomfortable, even painful at times, it is building something in you that quick success never could. A kind of patience that is not forced, but formed through experience. There are still moments where doubt takes over everything. Moments where you feel like you are wasting time, or missing something obvious, or walking in circles while others move forward. But even those moments start to change shape over time, because you begin to realize that not all movement is visible. Not all progress announces itself. Some of it happens quietly, in the way you handle pressure, in the way you recover after disappointment, in the way you keep going even when nothing is giving you a reason to. And that kind of development does not show up immediately in results, but it does show up later in ways you did not expect, often when you are no longer looking for it directly. There is a moment in almost every serious journey where effort and results stop speaking the same language. At first, everything feels connected. You do something and you expect something back. You put in work and you expect movement. Even small progress feels like confirmation that you are on the right path. But then there comes a phase where you are doing everything you know how to do, everything you have learned, everything you have improved on, and still the outcome doesn't reflect it. It is like sending messages into a place that no longer replies. You keep sending effort out, but nothing is coming back in the way you imagine. And slowly that mismatch starts to change how you think without you even realizing it. You start the day with structure. You wake up and tell yourself this is the day things will shift. You follow your routine, you complete your tasks, you push through distractions, you stay disciplined in ways that once felt powerful. But as the hours pass, there is no visible reward, no sign that things are improving, no confirmation that your direction is correct. And even though you are doing what you are supposed to do, your mind begins to quietly question whether supposed to is even real or just something people say to stay motivated. Because when results are missing for long enough, effort stops feeling like progress and starts feeling like repetition. At first, you try to protect your mindset. You remind yourself that consistency matters, that results take time, that success is built slowly. You repeat the things you have heard from others, the advice that is supposed to keep you grounded. But there is a difference between knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally. You can understand patience, but still struggle to live inside it when nothing around you is responding. And that gap between understanding and experience becomes the real pressure point. Because every day you continue working without results, that gap feels a little wider, a little heavier, a little harder to ignore. Then comparison starts to creep in quietly. You don't invite it, but it arrives anyway. You see others moving faster, achieving visible milestones, getting recognition, getting responses. And even though you try to remind yourself that everyone has their own timing, your mind still reacts emotionally before logic can catch up. It is not jealousy in the simple sense. It is more like confusion mixed with frustration. Because you are not doing nothing. You are doing everything you know how to do. Yet the outcomes around you suggest a different story, and that creates an internal conflict that is difficult to explain to anyone who is not living inside it. As time continues, effort begins to lose its emotional reward. You still work, but it doesn't feel as meaningful as before. The excitement of action slowly gets replaced by the pressure of expectation. Every task starts carrying weight, not because it is difficult, but because it feels like it should lead somewhere by now. And when it doesn't, even small setbacks feel bigger than they actually are. A delayed result feels like rejection. A lack of response feels like failure. A quiet day feels like proof that nothing is working. And slowly, your interpretation of reality becomes tied more to outcome than to process. This is where mental exhaustion starts to build in a different way. Not from lack of effort, but from effort without visible feedback. Because human minds are not built to operate endlessly without signals. When you do something and nothing returns, your brain begins to question whether the action is even being registered by the world. And once that question settles in, motivation starts to shift. You are no longer driven by excitement or curiosity. You are driven by pressure to justify your effort. And that pressure slowly drains the emotional energy that originally fueled the journey. There are nights when you sit alone and try to measure your progress, but you can only measure what you can see. And what you can see does not match what you expected by now. So you start revisiting your decisions. Maybe you chose the wrong path. Maybe you missed something important. Maybe others understood something you didn't. And even though you try not to spiral, the silence around your results gives your thoughts more space than usual. In that silence, doubt grows in subtle ways. Not loud enough to stop you immediately, but consistent enough to make everything feel uncertain. Still, you continue, not because everything feels right, but because stopping feels even more confusing. There is a strange point in long efforts where quitting doesn't feel like relief anymore. It feels like unfinished business, like leaving a sentence without an ending. So you stay, but your staying is different now. It is no longer powered by certainty. It is powered by endurance, and endurance is not loud. It is not emotional. It is quiet persistence that continues even when belief is temporarily unavailable. Over time, something starts to shift in how you understand effort itself. You begin to realize that effort is not always directly connected to immediate results. Sometimes effort is preparation for timing you cannot control. Sometimes it is building capacity that cannot be measured right away. Sometimes it is simply keeping you in motion until conditions align in ways you cannot predict or force. And even though that realization doesn't instantly remove frustration, it changes the way frustration feels. It becomes less like proof that you are wrong and more like part of a process that is still unfolding. You also start noticing that not all results are external. Some of them are internal and invisible at first. The way you handle pressure becomes different. The way you respond to uncertainty becomes calmer over time. The way you recover after disappointment becomes faster than before. These changes are not celebrated, not posted, not acknowledged by anyone around you. But they exist, and they accumulate quietly in the background of everything you are doing. And even when external validation is missing, something within you keeps adjusting. You begin to separate effort from outcome in a healthier way, even if it takes time. You stop assuming that lack of visible progress means lack of actual progress. You start understanding that some systems take longer to respond than expected, not because they are broken, but because they are operating on timing that you cannot see yet. And in that space between effort and result, something unexpected forms. A different kind of strength that is not based on certainty, but on continuation. A kind of mindset that no longer depends entirely on immediate reward to keep going. It does not feel powerful in the moment. It often feels uncertain, even uncomfortable. But it is real, and it changes how you move through challenges without needing constant confirmation that you are winning in the way you once imagined. There is a point in almost every difficult journey where everything inside you starts to slow down before anything outside actually changes. It is not dramatic at first. It begins quietly, almost unnoticed, like a small thought that keeps returning at the worst possible moments. You are still doing what you are supposed to do, still trying to hold yourself together, still showing up in your own life, but something in your energy feels different. The weight doesn't come from failure itself. It comes from the constant anticipation that maybe failure is all that is left. And when that thought stays long enough, even hope starts to feel like effort instead of emotion. At first, you tell yourself it is just a phase. Everyone goes through this. Everyone feels tired sometimes, so you push through it. You continue working, continuing building, continuing trying to stay consistent. But over time, the phase doesn't pass the way you expected it to. Instead, it stretches. It expands. It becomes part of your routine. You wake up with it, you carry it through the day, and you fall asleep with it sitting quietly in the background of your mind. And without realizing it, you begin to normalize a version of yourself that is always slightly exhausted, always slightly unsure, always slightly one step away from giving up. The breaking point doesn't always come like a sudden explosion. Sometimes it comes like silence, a moment where you sit down and realize you are not even reacting strongly anymore. The emotions that once pushed you forward have started to fade. Excitement is gone. Anger is gone. Even frustration becomes dull. And what replaces them is something more dangerous in a quiet way: emotional fatigue. The kind that doesn't scream, doesn't cry, doesn't argue. It just stops responding with the same intensity it once did. You begin to notice small changes in yourself. Things that used to matter deeply don't hit the same anymore. You read messages and feel disconnected. You look at your work and feel distant from it. You think about your goals and instead of excitement, you feel a strange emptiness. Not because you stopped caring completely, but because caring started to feel like something that costs too much energy. And when caring becomes expensive emotionally, the mind naturally starts to withdraw from it to protect itself. This is where the idea of quitting starts to feel different. It is no longer an emotional reaction. It starts to feel logical, reasonable, even responsible. You begin to think maybe you have done enough. Maybe you gave it your best shot. Maybe continuing is just repeating the same cycle without any guarantee that anything will change. And that thought doesn't come with panic. It comes with calmness. A very dangerous kind of calmness that feels like acceptance, but is actually exhaustion wearing the shape of clarity. In that state, even simple tasks feel heavier than they should. You sit in front of things you once worked on with energy, and now they feel distant. Not impossible, just unnecessary. Your mind starts creating justifications without you asking for them. You tell yourself you can always restart later. You tell yourself maybe this path was not meant for you. You tell yourself that letting go might actually bring relief. And slowly, those thoughts stop feeling like excuses and start feeling like truth. Because when someone is emotionally drained, even uncertainty sounds like certainty if it promises an end to the pressure. There is a specific moment in this breaking point that feels almost physical. You don't always notice it immediately, but it happens when your actions and your emotions disconnect from each other. You still move, but you are no longer fully inside your movement. You still think, but your thoughts are no longer fully invested. It is like watching your own life from a slight distance, participating just enough to function, but not enough to feel deeply engaged. And that distance is what makes quitting feel so close, because anything that promises to close that gap between effort and exhaustion starts to feel like relief. What makes this stage even harder is that it often comes after long periods of trying. Not after laziness, not after avoidance, but after genuine effort. After showing up repeatedly, after pushing through discomfort, after believing that persistence alone would eventually lead somewhere meaningful. So when results still don't match effort, the disappointment is not just about failure. It is about expectation collapsing under its own weight. And when expectations collapse quietly over time, they don't always break loudly. They dissolve into a kind of tired acceptance that nothing is guaranteed anymore. In that space, motivation becomes unreliable. Discipline feels mechanical. Dreams feel distant. And even the idea of success starts to feel abstract, like something that exists for others but not for you in this moment. You don't stop believing in success completely, but you start questioning whether your version of success is still aligned with reality. And that questioning becomes a loop that feeds itself, because the more you question, the more uncertain everything feels, and the more uncertain everything feels, the more tempting it becomes to simply step away from the entire structure you built around your effort. Yet even in this breaking point, there is something subtle happening underneath the surface. something that is easy to overlook when everything feels like it is falling apart internally. You are being introduced to a version of endurance that is not based on excitement or motivation, but on presence, just staying. Not because you feel strong, but because you are still here. And that is often the part of the process where people underestimate themselves the most, because it does not look like progress. It does not feel like growth, but it is the space where resilience is quietly forming without announcement. And even though quitting feels close, it is rarely just about giving up on a goal. It is also about trying to escape a feeling that has been building for too long without relief. The feeling of effort without reward, of movement without clarity, of trying without visible change. And when that feeling becomes constant, the mind naturally searches for an exit, not necessarily from the dream itself, but from the emotional weight attached to it. That is why this moment feels so intense, because it is not just about what you are doing. It is about how long you have been doing it without visible confirmation that it matters. Still, something inside you hesitates. Not always loudly, not always clearly, but enough to prevent a final decision. A pause before the end, a delay in the conclusion, a sense that maybe, just maybe, there is something you haven't fully understood yet about timing, about process, about how progress actually reveals itself over longer periods than you expected. And that hesitation, even though small, becomes the difference between ending a chapter and continuing through the part where meaning has not yet fully shown itself. And so you remain in that space, not fully continuing with certainty, not fully quitting with finality, but suspended in a moment that feels unresolved, carrying both exhaustion and the faint possibility that the story is still unfolding in ways that are not visible. There's a strange moment in life that most people don't notice when it happens. It doesn't come with celebration, it doesn't come with warning, and it doesn't come with clarity. It happens quietly in the background of ordinary effort. You are still doing what you are doing, still trying to build something, still showing up every day even when it feels like nothing is changing. And from your perspective, it looks like everything is stuck in the same place. The results are not visible, the progress feels slow, and the world around you doesn't seem to reflect the energy you are putting in. But what you cannot see in that moment is that your actions are not only affecting your own path, they are quietly influencing someone else's decision, somewhere you will never immediately witness. It often starts with something simple, something you consider insignificant, a video you uploaded without much confidence, a post you almost didn't share, a message you wrote while feeling uncertain about your own journey, or even just the way you kept going when quitting felt easier. You don't attach meaning to it at the time because you are too focused on what is not working for you. You are measuring everything through your own lens of results, timing, and expectations. And when those expectations are not met, it feels like nothing you are doing is reaching anywhere meaningful. But life doesn't always reveal its impact through direct feedback. Sometimes it moves quietly through observation, through distance, through people you will never meet in person. Somewhere, someone is watching a version of your effort without you knowing it. Not because you are successful, not because you are perfect, but because you are still there, still trying, still moving forward even when things are not responding the way you hoped. And for that person, your situation doesn't look like failure. It looks like persistence. What feels like confusion to you might look like courage to someone else who is standing in their own difficult moment. And without realizing it, your consistency becomes a reference point for someone who is trying to decide whether they should continue or stop. The most interesting part is that inspiration does not always come from success. In fact, many people are not inspired by perfect outcomes. They are inspired by unfinished stories, by people who are still in the middle of their struggle, by individuals who are not yet at the destination but are still moving forward despite uncertainty. Because that kind of movement feels real. It feels relatable. It feels human. And when someone who is also struggling sees that, it creates a silent connection that doesn't require explanation. It just lands in their mind and stays there longer than they expect. You might never know who it is, It could be someone who feels like quitting their job and then decides to hold on a little longer after seeing your persistence. It could be a student who feels overwhelmed but keeps studying because they saw someone else pushing through similar pressure. It could be a person dealing with self-doubt who suddenly feels a little less alone just by witnessing someone else continue their journey without having everything figured out. And the important part is that none of this requires you to be at the finish line. It only requires you to still be in motion. But because you are inside your own experience, you rarely recognize this impact. You are too close to your own struggle to see it as anything other than personal difficulty. You measure your days by what is not happening, not by what might be quietly forming through your actions. And so when progress does not appear in obvious ways, your mind assumes that nothing meaningful is happening at all. Yet impact is not always loud. It does not always send notifications. It does not always return immediately in the form you expect. Sometimes it travels slowly, through observation, through memory, through timing that is not aligned with your own awareness. There is also something deeper happening that you are not always conscious of. Every time you continue despite doubt, you are not just moving toward a goal. You are building a kind of emotional proof inside yourself. Proof that you can stay when things are uncertain. Proof that you can act without immediate validation. Proof that your effort does not depend entirely on external reward to exist. And while this internal shift may not feel powerful in the moment, it becomes something that others eventually notice in you without you having to explain it. People sense consistency. They sense endurance. They sense when someone is still standing even when conditions are not favorable. And that is where the twist becomes more meaningful, because the version of you that feels stuck is often the same version that is silently becoming a source of strength for someone else. Not because you are performing, but because you are continuing. Not because everything is working, but because you haven't stopped yet. And that simple fact carries more weight than most people realize while they are living through it. What feels like delay in your life might be influence in someone else's life. What feels like uncertainty in your story might be clarity in someone else's decision. There is also a quiet shift that happens internally when you begin to understand this. You start to see that your journey is not only about personal achievement, but also about presence, about showing up in a way that creates space for others to believe in their own continuation. And even though you are still facing your own challenges, this awareness changes how those challenges feel. They don't disappear, but they start to feel less meaningless. Because now, even your difficult days carry a kind of unseen contribution that extends beyond your immediate results. Over time, you begin to realize that influence is not always tied to success. It is tied to authenticity, to effort, to persistence during uncertainty. And those qualities are often most visible when things are not going well. When everything is smooth, everyone continues. But when things are unclear and someone still keeps moving forward, that is when it becomes noticeable to others who are silently going through their own struggles. And without any formal acknowledgement, your journey becomes part of someone else's motivation to not give up yet. Still, you may not see any of this directly. That is the difficult part. You continue your work without knowing who it is affecting or how it is being interpreted. You continue without feedback that confirms your influence. And yet, the influence still exists, even in silence, even in the absence of visible proof, even in moments where everything feels like it is not reaching anywhere meaningful. And slowly, if you stay long enough in this understanding, something shifts in how you define progress. It stops being only about immediate results and starts including unseen impact. It stops being only about personal milestones and starts including the quiet effect your persistence has on others who are watching from their own uncertain places. And that realization doesn't remove struggle, but it changes the meaning of struggle itself. Because now even the difficult moments are part of a larger story that extends beyond what you can currently see. There comes a point in life where everything you thought winning would look like starts to feel different from what you are actually experiencing. You used to imagine it as a clear moment, something obvious, something loud, something that arrives with certainty and removes all doubt at once. You thought winning would feel like arrival, like relief, like everything finally clicking into place after all the effort you have been putting in. But the longer you stay in the process, the more you start to realize that real life doesn't always announce progress in the way you expected. It doesn't always give you a moment where everything suddenly makes sense. Instead, it teaches you to recognize change in quieter forms, in ways that are easy to overlook if you are only searching for one type of result. At first, you measure everything by outcomes. You look at numbers, responses, opportunities, visible milestones. You compare where you are to where you thought you would be by now. And when those markers don't align with your expectations, it feels like you are falling behind. It feels like something is missing, like something is not working properly. But over time, something begins to shift in how you define movement. You start noticing that not all progress can be measured immediately. Some of it happens in how you respond to pressure. Some of it happens in how quickly you recover after disappointment. Some of it happens in how you continue even when motivation is not present. And none of these things show up as clear victories, but they are still part of growth that is happening quietly underneath everything else. There is a version of winning that most people don't talk about because it doesn't look impressive from the outside. It doesn't come with instant recognition. It doesn't always change your circumstances right away. It is the kind of winning that happens inside your behavior before it ever shows up in your results. It is when you stop quitting every time things get uncomfortable. It is when you start showing up even when there is no guarantee that today will be different from yesterday. It is when you keep your standards even in moments where no one is watching. And while none of these things feel like success in the traditional sense, they are often the foundation that makes visible success possible later. You begin to understand that clarity itself is a form of progress. There are moments where you stop chasing everything at once and start recognizing what actually matters to you. Not because someone told you, not because of pressure, but because experience slowly filters out what is not aligned. That process can feel frustrating at first because it often comes after confusion, after trying many things, after feeling like you wasted time. But later, you realize that confusion was part of the shaping process. It was removing paths that were not meant for you, even if it didn't feel like guidance while you were in it. There is also a shift that happens in how you relate to timing. At one point, timing feels like something working against you. You feel late, behind, out of sync with where you think you should be. But as you continue, you start to notice that timing is not always about speed. It is about readiness. There are things you thought you were ready for earlier that would have overwhelmed you if they had arrived too soon. And there are things that only start to make sense after you have gone through certain experiences first. So what once felt like delay begins to feel more like preparation, even if you only understand it in hindsight and not in the moment. Another important realization is that not all effort produces immediate visible change, but that does not mean it is wasted. There are forms of effort that reshape how you think, how you handle stress, how you make decisions, how you approach uncertainty. These changes are not always obvious day to day, but they accumulate over time. And one day, you find yourself reacting differently to situations that would have broken you before. You handle pressure with more stability. You think more clearly in situations that used to overwhelm you. And in those moments, you begin to see that something inside you has already won in ways that your external situation has not yet caught up with. You also start to realize that peace is part of winning in a way that is often underestimated. Not constant excitement, not constant validation, but a kind of internal stability that allows you to continue without being completely controlled by every outcome. It is the ability to keep moving without needing everything to be perfect first. It is the ability to stay grounded even when things are uncertain. And this kind of peace does not come from everything going right. It often comes from surviving enough moments where things did not go right and still choosing to continue afterward. There is also a deeper understanding that forms around setbacks. At one point, setbacks feel like proof that something is wrong, that you are off track, that you made mistakes, But over time, you begin to see that setbacks are not always corrections in the way you initially think. Sometimes they are redirections that you only understand later. Sometimes they slow you down so you don't miss something important. Sometimes they push you into a version of yourself that is more prepared than the one you were before. And even though it is difficult to accept in the moment, you start noticing that many of the things that shaped you most did not come from smooth progress, but from unexpected resistance. And as all of this slowly builds in your understanding, your definition of winning begins to expand. It is no longer tied only to one outcome. It is no longer dependent on one moment of arrival. It becomes something broader, something more layered, something that includes growth that is not immediately visible. You start to see that continuing when it would have been easier to quit is a form of winning. Learning from what didn't work is a form of winning. Staying consistent when motivation disappears is a form of winning. And even changing your mindset about what progress actually means becomes a form of winning in itself. There is a quiet strength in realizing that not everything has to happen on your timeline to still be meaningful. That just because something is not visible yet does not mean it is not forming. That just because you are still in the process does not mean you are behind. And this understanding does not remove difficulty, but it changes the relationship you have with it. It makes the journey feel less like a constant measurement of where you should be, and more like a gradual unfolding of who you are becoming while you are still on the way. This content is created for motivational and educational purposes only. It is not a guarantee of success or specific outcomes. Every individual's results depend on their personal effort, circumstances, decisions, and timing. The purpose of this video is to inspire reflection, resilience, and a healthier perspective on setbacks and progress.